afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you guys so much for coming. It's part of our series, our summer series, and we're always so grateful that you're interested in some of the really interesting historic presentations. We're very fortunate to have Dru Stratman. She's a member of the Eagle River Historical Society. She's a docent at most of the museum, would you say? Yeah. And the more we talked and the more we discovered our interest, she has this fascinating family story, and this topic, obviously, we're all interested in. So thank you very much. At the end of the presentation, if you have any questions for Dru or for the organization, please let us know.
Thank you all for coming. I am going to be talking a brief history of golf and then the history of the Eagle Waters golf course. Afterwards, hopefully, there will be a video, short video afterwards, and then you can go over to the artifact table and browse over there. So you're probably wondering what curling has to do with golf. Scotland. So the Scotland country is very famous for inventing new sports. Curling, golf, and my favorite, log throwing, as in the Highland Games, which are going on right now. So the history of golf has been around for centuries. They think way back, years and years ago, that there was a cup and round stones and people used to hit the stones into the cup. But in 1457, King James II banned golf in Scotland because he wanted his subjects to practice archery skills because they were going to go to war. In 1502, King James IV lifted the ban and he said, everybody go play golf. And so he became the first golfing monarch. This lovely lady is the Queen of Scots, and she was studying in France. She took the golf over to France, and France loved it. And so they became one of the premier places to golf also in France. And the word caddy is from her military aids called cadets. One of the most famous places for golfing is at St. Andrew's Golf Course. It's just outside Edinburgh, and they've been golfing there since the 1400s, during, King James, all of those guys. On a recent trip to Scotland, we learned that the most northerly golf course in the UK was in Shetland Islands. And also in the rural areas, people that have large tracts of land will build their own golf courses. So Scotland is very famous for their own, and also golfing has just become worldwide. The history of Eagle Waters Golf Course starts with a group of summer residents. They were at the Everett Resort. They were guests, or they owned private cottages along the peninsula. I can just imagine how this went down. The men were in the bar. They had their cocktails in hand after a long day on the lake, fishing, swimming, boating, and someone says, you know what we need? A golf course. So I couldn't find when they made the decision or who exactly said it, but in August of 1915, Emil Bittner, Thomas Harris, and Danford Baker bought land for the golf course for $77,000, which is approximately, $2,500, which is approximately $77,000 in today's money. They bought the land from James and Mary Logg, who received 73 acres as a land grant in the late 1890s during the Theodore Roosevelt administration. This is a copy of that deed. In August of 1917, just 2 years after they bought the land, they opened the course. a land contract for $8,700, which is about $230,000 in our today's money. They had to pay $1,500 down, $500 a year at 6% interest, which is pretty hefty for that time. They were busy these 2 years. Now they're a nonprofit corporation with Emil Bittner as president and E.A. Everett as secretary. The 1917 deed shows that there was a contract that included the buildings, the equipment, the tools, and the furniture. So they had already built, in 2 years, they had built the clubhouse and they had made the course, which is pretty good for 2 years. Now was the time for family golf and many, many tournaments.
Do you know how many holes were on the original?
Do I win?
How many holes were on the original course?
Was it a
No, I don't. I don't have an original. Many,
Were these
yes.
guys from Chicago, the three men?
No, Emil Bittner was from Chicago, Harris was from Oklahoma, and Baker was from Los Angeles. The course is on Voyager Lake and Eagle Lake. In the beginning, it was a private club for cottage owners and guests at the Everett Resort. The Everett Resort was on Cranberry Lake and Catfish Lake. It was right in between there. They sold memberships, and in the beginning, the only way to get to it was by boat. Then in 1926, Bittner, Harris, and Baker sold their third share back to the Eagle Waters Golf Course for $1 each. Then in December of 1944, there were new owners and a new name change. It was now called the Everett Golf Club. The owners are E.H. Thurston, A.C. Allen, A.E. Butler, E.J. Carroll, James Costin, Henry Held, Fred Waterman, E.J. Kelly, J.H. King, W.E. Olson, F.J. Singh. This group of men would have privileges, lifelong privileges, and golfing for free for the rest of their life. After the sale of the course in 1951, there was a push for modernization. The new owners of the Eagle Waters Golf and Country Club are James Costin, Harbor Point, Warren Holtzman, Eagle Waters Resort, William Pierce, Catfish, and Clinton King in Cranberry. They had big plans, which included club facilities, bar, lounge, food, golf course, and by opening it to the public, they were able to bring more recreational facilities to the area and also increase the revenue. The first planned a restaurant and a cocktail lounge. The cocktail lounge they enclosed, and it had a view of the golf course. They also served food at the tables and the counters. They had heating installed in the locker rooms, and in the clubhouse, the caddies now had their own showers and toilets, thank heavens, underneath the clubhouse. And in order to get a liquor license, they had to get memberships with dues. Now, family membership, a husband and a wife, was $1,000 a year, or $1,225 approximately. And that would be for unlimited golf and use of the cocktail lounge for card playing, bridge, canasta, that kind of thing. They also had junior and associate memberships, and this was the heyday of the Eagle Waters Golf Course. This is when they had famous people come as guests there. It was President Eisenhower, his brother Milton, golfers Ollie Myers and Walter Hagen, and movie stars Joan Crawford, Janet Gaynor, and Elizabeth Taylor. And we have a picture, a signed picture over there of the Three Stooges which are said also to be guests of the Eagle Waters Golf Club. One of our local caddies, Emerson Farnell, had some quotes that are quite interesting. He said, quote, "We'd get out on number 3 when Mayor Kelly of Chicago was teeing off. Captain Barry, his bodyguard, would give me his gun, and I'd blast the ball from the tee. He always got a kick out of that." He also remembered that there would be 100 caddies to serve the members, and that even in the Depression, there were 4 Fleetwoods, Rolls-Royce, Cords that would be parked in the clubhouse. And he also said that it wasn't uncommon to have bets of $1,000 a hole. In 1963, the course sold to Jim Mason, and he later renamed it Lake Forest Resort and Club. In 1978, he added 4 condo units, and this was the first successful timeshare in Wisconsin. In the 1970s and the 80s, the remaining 20 condo units were built, and this was developed by the Nusser family. In 1981, the Lake Forest Resort Club is now incorporated as a nonprofit. It was owned by 700 families, and they elected a board of directors, and then the board hired a manager for the day-to-day operations. Then, in the early 2000s, the Delmark Group purchased the course, and a condo plan was approved in 2007. However, golfing continued until 2022. This is a picture of today's golf course, or before they closed. Now the course is closed and condos are being built. It's a legacy to all of the men and women who work so hard to build the course, to maintain it, to try to keep up with the times. And so the families could play golf for 105 years. Now it's a memory of the Eagle Waters Golf Course, of all the families that did play golf and enjoy the course, all the wildlife on the course, and just to play a few holes.
Would you identify those ladies, please? Particularly the second to the right?
Oh, this one, this lady right here is Emil Bittner's wife. Now, hopefully. Is it working?
Patience. Saint of technology.
You might have to click
Click, double click it.
on the computer.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh. I don't know if it'll work or not. Because I don't think this is connected to that.
You might have to use
keyboard
the
to
mouse
see.
and the keyboard that's.
Yeah, the keyboard that she brought in.
Let me see here. L. Like this. So this isn't connected to that. This other thing.
Looks to be a link. When you move that mouse, it moves the mouse up there.
wants to work. Do you know what the name of it's called?
Let me see if I can do
Because
it.
I'll have to probably. Is it on YouTube or?
No,
No.
it's either on here and it was on there.
Okay. You said it's on the,
Let me turn this off.
oh, I think I got it.
There we go.
Oh,
There
it's
we
separate.
go.
Thank you.
That's Emil Bittner.
She's got it. Thank you.
Accessibility shortcuts, 8 items. Voice guide. Off.
We got it.
There.
It's okay.
I'm trying to get the volume down.
Did you know where this is? Where this is?
This is probably around maybe 1918, somewhere over here.
Drew, are these your relatives?
Yes.
That's cool. Where did you find this?
We have this on the VCR.
Oh, that's cool. We should get a copy of that for
So those are your relatives?
I'm thinking if this is like your
looks like
Such style.
looks perfect.
that's your relative.
Yeah, you see the pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
They also.
So is this part of a larger video?
There's a little bit,
Okay.
but they look good. When I came here, she couldn't quite get it all. It's
That's
just,
fine.
yeah.
That's cool.
They're all snappy dressers.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can see the clubhouse
I
here.
know,
It's,
it's so hot.
that's my grandmother.
Oh, that was our words.
All that stuff.
Can you imagine?
I think it was Arthur Woods Jr. Everybody else. I think it was,
You're saying
and that wasn't.
1918, you're saying?
Around 1918, yeah.
And this is the original clubhouse?
Yeah, same clubhouse, yeah.
Do you know what happened to the clubhouse? It's still.
Well, it's still there, but it looks different because it's
It's
enclosed.
enclosed now?
They served great hamburgers. Nana would take it. Oh, very cool.
Have any questions?
So what was your relationship to these?
So Emil Bittner is our great-grandfather,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And Danford Baker.
And Danford Baker is her great-grandfather.
I told Drew to put me on the artifact table, but she didn't really.
So did your, generationally, your whole family play golf?
Yeah,
Would you say yes?
yep,
That's cool.
yeah. And we've always had like family tournaments and stuff like that as part of our thing. And we haven't had one since it closed in 2022. Yeah, when we don't know what to do, we're like
You're
lost.
gonna have to find a new golf course.
Are Bittners related to Janishes?
Yes,
How?
she is,
I'm-
yeah, she's
I'm-
her grandmother.
Yanish was my grandfather and grandmother.
So Dottie is what?
That's,
Dottie was my great aunt.
and my great aunt.
Lizzie was my great aunt, our great aunt.
So
Yeah.
he-
So Lizzie and Dottie were twins. And Lizzie is my grandmother.
So is it, am I correct that Mr. Janish was the designer of the hockey stadium?
That is not in our family lore. He was, Fritz Janisch, Fred Janisch was designed the first ice castles. And I don't know about the
He did.
hockey. You're talking about the dome, what did we, the dome. We called it the pumpkin, jack-o'-lantern.
Yep, Jacqueline.
Jacqueline.
Great.
Yeah, he did.
That, I can't, it never was in family lore, and he died in 1957, so as a 7-year-old, I got people.
So did you, when you were going through the ownership, Clint King actually owned it, did you say that?
Yes,
Okay.
Clinton King, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was one of those that was in 19...
60s.
Yes,
Late 50s, early
Yeah.
60s.
51. 1951, he was in with the group.
Yeah, but he ended up owning it himself.
Oh, he did? Oh, I didn't find that. Over here is the, I think memorized, is the deed that
In
shows.
fact, he probably sold it to Jim Mason.
Okay.
Down the shore from us, is that what
In 63.
That would make sense.
Is that Clinton Kane that lived next to you?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Do you know where the
Where he
Kings lived?
Where, who?
King.
The King.
Well, King, sure, I know exactly where they live.
My Cranberry?
They lived on Cranberry.
Okay, so that was the White Boathouse.
Yeah.
Two doors down.
Right. Woody Allborn has that house.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
There's no golf.
I was a caddy out there, so, for
Oh.
many years, so.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that golf course. I mean, it was the most exciting thing in my young days, the first time I drove to that golf course. And that's interesting. I wonder what year the road was put in. That when they first built it, the road wasn't there.
Yeah.
The road is incredible. It goes all the way along the lake and around. The first green was right on the lake. And the road went on the back side of the green. So you drove around the green and then went to the clubhouse.
And then they did that improvement in 1951, right? When they made all the improvements.
I don't know, what kind of improvements are you talking about?
Well, they said there was utility improvements, the general stuff like making it look better and
I
adding a
would have
restaurant.
thought that road, that film that you just showed, there were
Yes.
cars. There was
Yes.
a car in there.
Yes,
That was very old, right?
yes, right.
Okay, how did that car get there if there wasn't a road?
Well, I don't know that that card was on the road to the golf
Was
course.
the film from the golf course?
The film was from the
Well, there
golf
was
course.
a road, there was a car.
There was a car, but I don't know if that picture of the car
I think
was
that
at-
road was probably built a long time ago.
Yeah,
I don't think that, when you talk about 51, I would think
No.
that that road was there before 51.
I was wondering if they changed the road.
Because I remember the story about Walter Hagen, on that first hole was the greatest golf hole in the world. It was a dogleg right, and the road was on the right, and Walter Hagen hit his shot on the road, and they said, well, what are you gonna do? He says, well, I'm just gonna hit it off the road, and he hit it off the road right on the green. So that goes back to, yeah, when Walter Hagen was there, which is probably in the 50s or 40s, you know, so, yeah, I'm not sure about the road, but, yeah, it was a phenomenal place. And the heyday was probably when there were 100 caddies. By the time I got there was only maybe a dozen caddies. So,
So was that the 50s?
and then the other question would be, okay, it was called Eagle Waters initially, right? But you never said anything about Maury Holtzman. So why did they call it Eagle Waters if Maury Holtzman didn't own it? He was on the list later on.
Later on, yeah. So I'm not sure why they called it Eagle Waters. I'm not sure. Other than it was near Eagle Waters.
It's on Eagle Lake.
It's on
Yes.
It's on Eagle Lake.
Yeah,
It's on Eagle Lake,
yeah.
but Eagle Waters, I would think they'd use Eagle Waters' name without his permission.
Like branding.
On the whole.
So he may have had some money in it initially that
There
isn't
is,
showing up.
yeah, I tried to find a list of
Well,
the original people that were, you know, maybe not owners, but also guests there. And there's a list from a golf tournament there that has a list of people that were in the golf tournament, and that was in 1920. When I looked in the newspapers, that was about the earliest I could find any mention about the golf course. And it was, almost all of it was about tournaments. So I have a list of, I have a book here with some tournament information in it too. But I tried to find somebody who would have a list of the original, long list of the original owners who
Yes, that was my question.
That was what you're, because as late as the 50s, the Everett had a sign that was for Jewish people couldn't go to the Everett. Huh? Yeah,
When did we caddy there?
in the 60s.
60s.
And my dad caddied there when he was probably in high school. And he talked about Mr. Fiddler with a gun. My dad caddied for Mayor Kelly and his family and
Yes.
the nanny. He carried a gun.
Oh,
The guns were very prevalent.
I bet they were.
And fired off to the
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
There
I
were
don't-
signs on the golf courses dedicated to, like there was the Bittner sign. Do you have any clue what happened
Yeah,
to
but all the
those?
signs, I don't recall those signs. You felt that they were on the golf course itself.
Like on the
Like,
tee boxes.
like entering the hole or the tee off box.
Yeah.
Well, you see what they did at, the one group bought it, then they shut down the first hole, the second hole, the third hole, and the sixth hole.
Oh.
so this is a picture. So I remember when they went to do this picture, and this is Bittner number hole, part 4.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then we assumed that there was one for Baker.
That isn't number 4.
No,
It's a
it's,
par 4.
yeah, part 4,
That's the
number 1.
That's
First
yeah,
hole.
because that's a Chanticleer in the background.
Right.
Yeah, that all makes
And
sense.
this is Stanford Baker's daughter. And the rest of these were all
That's a,
Bittner.
that's a classic.
Well, yeah, that's Teddy Youngish.
This is Ted Yanish here. And this
And
is
then-
Dickie Yanish. Bessie Baker. And Bertha Bittner. And this is Greta Bittner,
Wow.
Bush.
Yeah, so what was Mrs. Janish's name, first name?
Gertrude.
Well, everybody called her Dickie.
Dickie. Her real name is Gertrude.
So were Dottie and Gertrude were sisters?
Yes.
Yeah. I took care of them. I was the car dealer, you know, and
Oh, so
so
what,
I took care of
you
them.
were Mike?
I'm Tom.
Tom, okay. The Ford dealer?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. You
Oh,
took great
yeah.
care
I
of
took-
Dickie. Thank you.
That would not
This is-
have anything but a
this is
Wrangler
just
and a Ford.
Two many women that I took
He's
great
got so
care
many
of.
old girlfriends and
Yeah, so- well, their husbands were passed away, you know,
Yeah.
so they needed someone that they could trust, and somehow I
Definitely.
gained their trust. Yeah, but
Pete Runses also came to Grandma's rescue often. He
Yeah.
was the caretaker at Everett for so long.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a classic history that people like Vito don't have a clue about, but he's learning.
I remember golfing with my dad at Lake Forest. I remember I hit a deer with a golf ball. When I was a kid, and I thought I was going to get arrested. But I'm in tears because I was very sick.
And, you know, when you talk about the big cars, the big cars, we'd have valet parking. So you'd drive the car up to the clubhouse, and then a valet would park the car.
Okay.
And then that was usually for Saturday nights, we had a prime rib dinner on Saturday nights. And the chef actually came from Florida and stayed right there. And it was coat and tie, tuxedos in some cases. And Walter E. Olson, who helped build this building, was one of those people. And he would drive up in a big black Cadillac, and he'd have a tuxedo on. And another guy was, and by the time I got there, there were many prominent Jewish families, and one of them was Bob Wishnick, who was a one-armed man, who was a phenomenal golfer. And he, for Saturday night, he put on a tux and he put on an artificial arm for Saturday night, and wear a white glove. Yeah, it was really, really classy.
you were in the kitchen.
I was a dishwasher.
we would go to the clubhouse.
Go to
I'd
the
always get my
clubhouse.
hand with
Yeah.
the french fries, but it was served on a white tablecloth. you
Yeah.
know. And I had to mind my manners, I had to wear a dress.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It was very, very uppity, very
Right.
first class.
And we just, yeah.
You know, a lot of alcohol was consumed and a lot of, and the big event for the year was called the Calcutta. And by the time I got there, the Calcutta it was still big, but the money wasn't quite as big. What you entered the Calcutta, a man and a woman entered the Calcutta, husband, wife, whatever. And then they put the men's names in one hat and the ladies' names in the other hat. And then Friday night, they would draw for teams. So you didn't get to play with the person that you entered. And they draw for teams, and then they would do pari-mutuel betting on these teams, and then they would auction off the teams. And some of the teams would go for thousands of dollars. And then you'd play the next day, and it was only 9 holes, and it was alternate shot, which means that one person hits the tee shot, and the next person hits the next shot. And can I tell a great story?
Yes, it's interesting.
So there was one of the best golfers out there. His name was Eddie Ryan. He was a politician from Chicago who lived on the peninsula. And he drew Loretta tennis. And Loretta was not a very good golfer, but Eddie was the best golfer. So Eddie, so there was still a lot of money bet on Eddie and Loretta. So on the first hole is the men hit from the tee on the odd number holes. So Eddie hit him. So Eddie gets up and this first hole is a dogleg right. It's very difficult. There's a pond in front of the green, a little 10-foot pond, maybe 30 feet wide, 30 feet long, 10 foot wide. And Loretta, so Eddie hits a perfect drive, and Loretta hits the next shot about 5 feet. You know, and Eddie said, "Don't worry about it, Loretta, we're still okay." So Eddie hits from there over the pond, right on the green. And he's now about 10 feet past the pin, putting back towards the pin, but also putting back towards the pond, and the pin is right on the edge of the green. Loretta gets up and hits the putt in the pond.
Of course.
and they take an 11 on the hole. And Loretta, and Eddie doesn't speak to Loretta the rest of the Now that might all be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's part of the story. Yeah, it was a big deal. I won the Calcutta 3 times with different women, and but by that time it wasn't. They still sold off the teams, but there wasn't thousands of dollars. It was hundreds of dollars. But yeah, great place. You know, and I'll tell one more story.
Yes.
I gotta go play golf. So the first day I got a job out there caddying, and I caddied for one of the original names, Bromstead, and I made $7, and I went down to the caddy shack, and I'm pretty excited about making $7. And now I'm 14 years old, and there's 2 brothers that are 16, and they're big, and so you know, I know them, you know, whatever. I'm bragging about my $7. They grab me, take my $7, and then take me by my arm and my legs and throw me into the lake, into the channel. And then they laughed at me and said, "You can come back to work tomorrow."
Yeah.
And you know, the funny thing is, I said, "Fine."
That was a smart thing to say.
Yeah, never went home, never said anything to my mother and dad.
saw the $7.
Never saw the $7, but I got to go back to work. Yeah, so there's, yeah, he did good. He did some good research. It's sad. Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. It's really sad. Now the clubhouse will get demolished, and there'll be, you know, a big condo right there. But that's progress.
It's not going to be demolished.
Huh?
Clubhouse, they say, they might.
They might turn it into a restaurant.
That'd be great.
Okay, let's hope they do that. But yeah, it was a phenomenal golf course, and you know, can you imagine Walter Hagen played that golf course? I mean, Walter Hagen at that point was the man, or Eisenhower. You know, yeah, it was.
He got to stand.
Or Mayor Kelly. You know, I mean, Kelly was sure a lot. But and the gambling, you're right. I know Ray Tennis was Loretta's husband, and I got to know him quite well. And he said they would gamble thousands of dollars on shots, and they were good golfers. Yeah.
Shots or holes, yeah.
Yeah. They
Do you remember the placement of the holes? So like, was one always that way? Was
yeah.
two that way?
I
It was
remember
always this.
Yeah.
It was the same as it is today.
No. So what happened was the group bought it at the end.
Right.
So the value was the land on the water.
Right.
So you get rid of number 1 and number 6. Those were both on the water. One on Eagle and one on the Channel or Voyager. So then they got rid of 1, 2, 3, and 6. And then they built holes back in the woods. So they ruined the golf course. Yeah. Again, and now there's no golf course. But yeah.
Just bringing that history a little bit forward, my family golfed there.
Right.
You know,
Well, your
Dad golfed there a lot, but my sister Nan,
is married to a Mason.
oh no, different, that's Dave's wife.
Oh, Dave's wife.
Right,
Yeah.
but my other sister had her wedding reception in the golf clubhouse.
Yeah.
And then they were part of the early 70s with the Masons,
Yeah.
the timeshare.
Yeah.
And we still have that timeshare to this day
Mhm.
on Voyager, which is where the new development is just
Right.
looking
Here.
desperately to have that, but that's still holding out as a part of the history of that golf course, are those timeshares.
Yeah.
And they're still,
Is that in the treehouse?
Treehouse is a little bit different, that's a
Okay.
different section. That's actually.
Different ownership.
Exactly.
Okay.
And,
Tree houses were built by the people that bought the course from Mason.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Last group.
This is the original, you know, in Voyager where it's those units, which are dated, but it is the 70s, but they were the original with Mason through Dave, you know.
Yeah, Mason was in reality ahead of the
Absolutely,
times.
way ahead of his time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so they're very sad about losing that history. That's 40, 50 years of their family to be connected. But they felt all the changes of the golf course up on the hill and the new homes that are right on the water with that new development right over their shoulder. I mean, it's just the different times and what's changed.
Well, that's why we have an historical society to help us remember.
Exactly. And to get it right,
Well,
you know, to remember it
Absolutely.
correctly.
Well,
Yep.
to advocate for what's existing, because when you sell nostalgia for pennies on the dollar,
Kind of
this is what happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what's on the old,
Yeah, yeah, I'll do
the
it.
employees building?
I don't, let's have that conversation. Are we ending this?
Yes. No.
So we're concluding this part of the presentation. Please take a look at the material because obviously Dru has done an incredible job researching and documenting. I appreciate all the input from you guys, really, it's fabulous. That's again how we collect, gather, and share our heritage. That's what it's about. So thank you so much. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dru.